We've got a special Shopify 1% episode here. Last week, Shopify dropped their latest editions, the winter editions. It was called the Renaissance, the Renaissance edition, with the emphasis on the AI, because obviously a lot of the announcements are all around AI. So I wanted to bring on a couple experts in the area. They're actually two companies that are former guests on the show. Gavin from Shero Commerce was a former guest, and then I've got Max from Domaine. Domaine was a former guest, but it was Mac from Domaine, not Max from. That must be confusing at your company all the time.
It's like a Mac.
Wow. and three letters too, right? Like, so I brought in a couple people. We're gonna have a little bit of a roundtable discussion, dive into some of them. Which ones are like ones you want to absolutely jump on right now? What are things that are maybe exciting but not as important to get on, and maybe what was missed? What are some of our favorites? So let's get right into it, because there's a lot to cover. There was over 150 announcements. We're obviously not going to touch on all of them. I would highly encourage everyone to go to the editions release page and read through it. Like block off a couple hours on your calendar. I mean, this is your business. Block off a couple hours and go through it and learn it. But we're going to highlight some here and give some color on them. So let's get started. First one I want to touch on is the whole Agentic Storefront announcement. So Shopify they announced this recently, that you could Shopify and OpenAI were working together to make products discoverable in ChatGPT and potentially be actually purchased. I'm in Canada, so this hasn't actually worked in Canada yet. I think in the US it has for a brief period, but not everywhere. But now they're essentially saying they're going all in. And it's the new storefront essentially. And Shopify's big announcement was that Agentic Storefronts are here, and Shopify wants to be the place to store your product data if you want to be found. So let's get some feedback on this. So is this the new way that people are shopping, or is this just another top of funnel awareness thing that brands should be thinking about? Like, I've got my Google, I've got my SEO, I've got every social media, and okay, now I've got to consider this. Or is this the new way that shopping is going to happen and we need to go all in on this? I throw it to Max. Let me throw it to you to start, and we'll get feedback from both of you here.
Well, it's definitely something to take seriously. I think it's still, even though it might feel like we've been talking about it for 6-12 months already, it's still ultimately early. Like when we're seeing, GEO or chat, LLM based discovery trends across our brands, we're seeing exponential growth, 300 to 500%, even, over a small period of months, but we're still in single digits of overall acquisition channels. So it's something that where every brand should be thinking about how they can turn up and use these tools that Shopify is building. I mean, I think it's amazing that Shopify really is holding themselves accountable to be the forerunner in e-commerce integrations and approach with this type of discovery methodology. But I wouldn't be stressing it a lot. If you're a brand, I would just be using this time to get ahead of it, and thinking about the right ways to get ahead of it. Working with brands that have GEO experience. It's really, we see it as the next iteration of traditional SEO, imbalance of tech and content approaches. And there are some things that you can start doing to be able to really get ahead of this.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask. And Gavin, maybe you have some thoughts. Is there anything stores need to do, or does this just, there's been some comment that it just works now. If you're on Shopify, it just works. But I don't think that's necessarily true for the 5 million stores. It'll just works. I think there's some ways you can optimize it.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Max in the sense of, to start, I think the brands should definitely not leave this off their radar. There is going to be exponential growth, and we're seeing that ourselves. It does work out of the box, but this completely depends on store setup and how you've currently got it done. So there's a lot of third-party apps that exist that kind of take data out of Shopify and don't store that data in Shopify. So essentially, if depending on your store setup, if you're storing data in those third parties and you need answer engines to use that data to answer questions, you need to look at ways essentially to get that data back into Shopify through some means. That could be through metafield definitions. So I think for most brands, and again, it happens at different levels of scale and different levels of complexity, essentially the route is to get as much of your data natively into Shopify. And if you do that, you are set up. Obviously, this is just a Shopify conversation. Any other platform, it's a different conversation. But on Shopify, the rule should kind of be, how many questions can I answer from my Shopify data? Just that data that lives within Shopify. And if you can't answer the questions that potentially are being asked on answer engines, how do I get that data in?
Yeah. Do you think this will hurt brands using third-party PDPs, like product data platforms, where there's like, if it
Depends
doesn't
where the source
feed,
is.
yeah, and
Depends where the
if it
source
feeds
is.
everything
Yeah.
in, right?
I think it's not, depends on how it's architected. I don't think it like erodes at the idea of using PIMs, because typically a PIM-based workflow still gets your core catalog within Shopify. Like Shopify is still the central location for that. For like headless, where you're using third-party CMS and kind of binding that to product data, I mean, it's a consideration, but generally you should still make sure that the integrity of your product data within Shopify is correct and it's intentional, and it has the information that it needs to then syndicate to other channels just outside of your storefront. If you're not thinking multi-channel, you're thinking like uni-channel, or thinking putting too much emphasis on brand.com, like that's a concern.
And on that point, Max, as well, I think obviously it's like what you were looking at this from. We're looking at this from a lens of Shopify's feeding the answer engines. But if you're using any type of PIM or any type of feed to anywhere else, lots of these platforms are obviously still connecting and sharing data with these answer engines as well. Essentially, yeah, from a headless standpoint, as long as whatever is formulating a headless or you're pushing your data with, and we could talk about all the feed software and all PIM software, but as long as you're kind of covered, I suppose, from the element of the data itself and the questions answered, Shopify's feeding all this in through ACP, and ACP's been fed out that way. As long as the other element to that stack where that data lives is also feeding that into ACP, you are covered, essentially.
Yeah. I said PDP, I meant PIM. I was thinking CDP in my head for actually a question. I know there's too many acronyms, and yes. Okay, let's move to the next one. I think I have like 15 on my list. I know we're not going to get through all of them, but I want to touch on as many as we can. SimGym is another one of the announcements that I thought worth highlighting. It's essentially, in a nutshell, it's an app you can install. Currently, it's in waitlist. I tried installing it the other day, and I had to join a waitlist, so it's not live yet, but you can install it, get on a waitlist, and the concept is for it to not user test, but more like stress test. And so not usability, but functionality, like do buttons work? It'll click everything. It'll go through, it'll scroll, it'll try to break stuff. And I don't know if it's at the level of actually creating like personas and like actually testing content, like headlines. Will this headline convert better or this? It's more like, does everything work? That's my take, unless you guys know different. What are your thoughts on this? Is this going to be a super value tool, or is this more of a novelty that might be more of a distraction?
I'll go. I mean, honestly, like I'm kind of mixed on this one. Like sometimes there's these reveals, and it's really like devil's in the details on the features and functionality to be able to address like mid-market as well as upper and large and enterprise. I think it's pointing to a future that I believe in, which is things like, you know, smoke testing or pre-release testing is going to be a mixture of manual and automated testing. I think for a lot of brands, it's still heavily manual, which is there for good reason. But look, if you can do personas, if you can eventually be able to create repeatable tests and regression tests that protect the brand as more brand awareness of where their own edges are, it could be really powerful. But if it turns into a generic tool where you can't put brand integrity like baked into that tool, then it might fall short. So for me, it's an area to watch, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
This was actually, Jay, on and you asked earlier on the podcast what my least favorite item was, and it was this item, right? And again, I'll see how it goes, but let me explain a little bit why I think that it seems initially like it's really good for small to mid brands, in the sense that's its immediate appeal, ones that aren't doing this on enterprise. But to kind of right now, to convert user query and user intent and brand personas around what that looks like, it's not and I'm not saying this from the Shopify side, it's just not there in AI. It's not there in order to, essentially, if we think about how AI is going to work in the different ways to how it works within the current methodology to finding whether that's social advertising or search advertising. It's problem fixing is what it works off, right? And
Yeah.
the realities is if it personas itself to fix the problem that the user has and it runs those tests through every possible problem that the user could potentially have, it will kind of get there. There's also and again, this isn't a kick. There is a small fee essentially associated to running certain simulations at certain volume.
Mm-hmm.
Within I've got early access and a little bit of a testing. Again,
you bugger.
Yes, sorry, Jay. But around that early access, the idea and the way that this is going is completely correct. And I think Shopify is almost showing the way that we need to think about this, as opposed to this is the very thing that brands will use. Do you know what I'm saying? So app developers should take note, look at what this could potentially look like, look at the root of what problems they are facing. It's definitely going to be a problem. I don't think it's a problem so much today, as Max mentioned earlier, around like the level of usage from answer engines and level of traffic isn't particularly massive. Let's see what 26 brings, but then it'll grow. But I think it's kind of the direction of travel is the most interesting part for everybody, whether it's brand, developers, agencies, especially.
I agree there. Like it's really good that Shopify is painting a picture and providing a low-cost tool for a certain market. I think time will tell exactly what that market looks like. But it is spinning the idea. It's like showing the way. And Shopify ecosystem, so the value comes from a lot of third parties that are tightly coupled within this ecosystem. So I wouldn't be surprised if this becomes some sort of functional baseline, and then there's a whole bunch of third parties that start to take that idea, run with it, and add fidelity to it. And then, we might see just generally that there's more thought and intrigue around automated, sim generation and testing, coming into 2026.
Well, and it kind of leads into the next one that I wanted to highlight, which is native AB testing, because I feel this is in a similar vein. SimGym is more testing something that might be broken, where AB testing is more testing, does a user understand the copy? Does the images work better? Is there...
This is actually in my most favorite announcements as opposed to my least favorite announcements. Yeah, and that one will get the headlines and this one wouldn't, because this is wrapped in rollouts.
Right.
And rollouts does have A/B testing, which I think is super useful, and it will definitely be used in the way that this is demonstrating. But it has things like, themes released at certain times, products released at certain times, linked to A/B testing, all part of rollouts. So I think essentially it's kind of in the non-agentic way, I suppose, and in the more real, in the more real world usable factors by brands, agencies. I think rollout is definitely a big player, because A/B testing mixed with deployment of themes, products, catalogs collectively as an essential app has kind of been asked for years by lots of us in this space. There's, we've had workarounds and we've had certain things that we've done to make this happen, but wrapping A/B testing with theme rollout products uploads, I think is massive.
It's funny, like my least favorite and most favorite are like exactly the same as yours, Gavin. Like,
there you go.
It's funny is that
it's again, you've got to remember, when editions drops, you've got to grab headlines to a degree. There's a certain element of things that seem brilliant, and then that is why kind of SimGym seems big and rollout seems small, but the reality is rollout is big and SimGym's not small, but it's just not big today, and it's got potential, it's got legs, shows the app developers the way. And then kind of on that point, I think, Jay, just to add, I think, and you're probably going to ask this, but I'll kind of just because I think it does lead into it, is I think around the favorite announcements of how this really essentially looks for brands, developers, agencies. I think Catalog API, and you touched on this in the first point that you made, I think Catalog API is probably the biggest and most influential thing collectively. I think, and even though this was, like I said, this was announced a while ago, and it's been announced a while ago, the biggest single thing there is not the fact of what it does and how it works. It's the fact that we all now have access to this. whether that is developers, app developers, agencies, how that can work, what that can look like. So that kind of leads into those two things, I suppose. But yeah, I'm interested. What was your favorite one, Max? Did you have one?
I mean, it was around rollouts. Like, I think like showing the investments into the headed CMS and like, you know, it's not just about A/B testing, as you said. It's like tied into the way that you can think about content, providing the ability for brands to be more dynamic and how they control that content, showing the fidelity of like the headed CMS. Because, you know, as you move up market and need to grow as a brand, you know, there are some pain points there. And Shopify is showing that it's investing in those pain points. You know, Launchpad was how you would release content, you know, in the past. That's kind of getting deprecated. So this is a way that, you know, the view of it being more tightly coupled into that overall, you know, CMS ecosystem. And it also paints the light that we can expect more CMS-based releases coming into, you know, the next edition. So I'd say that would be a place for me to watch.
Of course.
Yeah. It feels like we're close. Like, to me, I wasn't as excited about the A/B testing, but it's interesting. Like, I'm a huge believer in it, but I haven't played with it yet, but I have to be convinced that it's better than some of the tools that are out there.
Yeah.
If it is, then it's huge.
I mean, it probably won't be out the gate, right? That's true.
Yeah.
You know, these guys have been working in that space for a while. I think with A/B testing as well, though, and again, there's kind of a lot of there's a lot of strategic talk around A/B testing, but and it is all relevant massively in how you deploy that, what that looks like, what the roadmap is. But at the same time as well, just to dip your toe into A/B testing if you haven't. Now, A/B testing traditionally only really matters for relatively decent traffic websites. Like, there's no point A/B testing low traffic websites if the hook doesn't convert, the product's not a good product, the price point's not right, you know, the basics aren't correct. Obviously, most brands that work in the mid-large enterprise level and the kind of above, they look for something potentially a little bit more robust, but it's really interesting to see Shopify stepping into that space, bolting it on with other tools.
Yeah.
And I think that's really exciting, and they could certainly build that out.
Yeah. And the other thing is, like, saying it is just going to be like an A/B testing tool, like, it might be too narrow a dimensionality to think about it. Like, it could turn into being able to create content charting across different customer segmentation over time. Like, so
I
think that's what I'm hoping. I hope there's a bigger vision to it. I actually hope the AI theme generation, I hope when you create a page, you can push a button and create 7 different variations of it, with moving content around and having a hero image or a small image, and
it's going there, Jay. It's going there, Jay.
Well, that will be powerful.
And it will be massively powerful. And if you even think what it could mean for the B2B segment of Shopify, in the sense of, if you look at B2B catalog surfacing or B2B themes based off which catalog you view, there's so many variants and so many options that they could build into rollouts that essentially have not really been discussed, because they've just announced rollouts as a relatively small feature. But at the same time, from the Sidekick side, from the B2B side, from the enterprise side, there's so much more they could build out within that functionality, which I think is really exciting.
Variant limit. They raised the variant limit. This was a big announcement. You know what's funny? We started, so I had a store on Shopify in 2009. Started building apps on Shopify in 2012. And there was always this 100 variant limit. I actually remember talking to Toby in Ottawa. We used to like spend a week out there every year. And I'd say, how can you raise the variant limit? And there's like, no, his exact words were, there's no logical reason a product should ever have more than 100 variants. And then I would talk to like other employees, and I would say, like, why can't, like, I actually had another store in BigCommerce and Shopify at the same time. And my store on BigCommerce, I sold outdoor sporting goods supplies. I had like hundreds of variations and colors and sizes. But then on Shopify, I had to create multiple products of the same one. And there was one person that actually told me it will never be increased. The way that the structure is built, a product structure can only have 100. It'll never be increased. So they finally did it.
It took so long is because they needed to do heart surgery onto their basic primitives to sort of enable this. Like, I think I heard about this like 2 years ago. And so it's good to see that it's kind of getting into the
Yeah.
It was
Well,
announced about it a year ago that it was
They-
happening, and then it took a year to get it, which was fine in the sense of at least we knew they were moving in that
That we're coming.
direction.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, is if you think about the variant limit, we get a variant limit, but we don't get a variant options limit, which is like, so you've increased the variant, and this is again, I'm not kicking Shopify,
Right.
but in reality, so you can add 2,000 variants to one particular option. So I can say
Yeah.
color, and I can offer 2,000 colors. But if I have color, size, weight, dimensions, style, fragrance, whatever, right, as an option, as other options within those 2,000, we're not quite there yet. This isn't a kick. It's just you still only get the same amount of variant options within what
What is
is.
that amount? I'm actually not aware of what the limit.
It's
Eight?
three.
8 options.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's three.
Yeah. And
It's still
that's
three. So yeah, it's three.
Interesting. I thought okay. So you can only have 3 different types of
Yeah,
options.
exactly. So if you've got
But-
color, size, yeah, exactly. If you've got color, size, and weight, hypothetically, and then you want to add flavor, I'm using this all hypothetically, you could not add flavor, even with the lesser variables. Now, obviously,
Right.
I think they're obviously going to be looking at this, and they've had to do open heart surgery to get to 2040-80. So it's a massive shift to the database. Think
Yeah.
about increasing that amount of levels across the amount of stores that Shopify has. It's pretty wild in terms of data infrastructure. I would imagine we'll get that within a year, but right
Yeah.
now, the three options.
and there's a couple of things there as well. Like there is certain verticals that this is really important for. Like we've worked with shoe brands that have a lot of different color variations when it comes to that top line. And
Yeah.
we have had to explode products and stitch them together on PDPs to be able to suit their product catalog. And this does help that, where they still could use 3 variant options to be able to get that done. Also,
Yeah.
beauty is a big part here. Like beauty have a lot of skin color shades and a lot of shades that they put out into a single product. So it makes sense to be able to utilize this to, make their product catalog simple. Technically,
Yeah.
you can get 4 if you use combined listings, which is why they probably kept this there for now. You can use a combined listing approach with Shopify to be able to get 3 and get a 4th there to stitch together multiple products in a kind of first party way.
Yeah.
And then the other thing,
Yeah, I think I was going to stipulate on that point though, Max, as well, is if you look at it from a beauty standpoint or a car part standpoint, let's say,
Mhm.
so 2 very different verticals. Let's say car parts, a crazy level of options within or computer configurations. You're trying to build a computer, hypothetically, you need all the parts, you need to build all the configurations. The problem still lies within that sector, but obviously is still massive in a small amount of variation, a small amount of options, but a large amount of variation sector. Beauty has just been fixed, essentially. Car parts and building computers, not so.
We built an app for that in 2012 called
You
Product
did.
Options.
You
Literally.
did. I've used it many times.
Yeah, we made a lot of money off of this 100 variant limit over the years. We actually don't have that app anymore, but no, there was like dozens. We built the very first Product Options app ever, but I think now there's probably hundreds. I don't remember. I don't even know. But
There's
um,
there's a few key players. There's nothing
Yeah.
like serious in that. There's 5 or 6 kind of players that play in that space.
I think the one piece of advice I'd give listeners is, sometimes just because you can have a lot of options on a product, there's sometimes still a strategy. And I don't know, you guys might have opinions on this, but if you're looking for a t-shirt on Amazon, you'll often see brands, what they do is they put the red one as a product listing, the blue one is a product listing, and the green one is a product listing. So it's actually 3 products. And then when you open it up, each one has its own size. And so it covers, it's sometimes a better shopping experience when you're browsing a collection page. Like if you're selling a winter jacket and there's variations, to see the variations and drill down. It's like when you buy a Mac. Like this always blows my mind. If you go to buy a Mac or an iPad or anything, there's only one. They just have different memory, different screen size, different processor, different everything. They really only need one. But if you click to buy a Mac, they show 4 or 5, and then you open that one up, and then there's a couple options, because that's the way customers think. They don't want 2,000 choices on a product. They want to go down a choice path, right?
Yeah, it's like this is one of the biggest decisions that brands should be thinking about with product merchandising when they are thinking about how to architect or replatform or rethink the theme. It's how do you want your products to either stitch together or combine, and how do you want it to come into listing pages and PDPs? There can be some patterns around like average order value and the need to explode. Like jewelry is a great place where you'll have every single iteration on a listing page or collection page. you said like high-end jackets is a good example there. Whereas for more commodified or smaller price point products, you might want to combine. It's just, this is not a rule by any means, but there can be patterns that we see there.
It depends as well, I feel, on the angle that's asking the question. So as an example, if you're speaking at a brand's SEO team, they might prefer having single listing pages because they get more control, right? So, and now that's going to change slightly if we move slightly more into the agentic answering questions route and less on I need to Google whack something and hope we've got more H1 tags. So when we kind of get into the weeds of like different, whether it's a merchandising team, the SEO team, the marketing team, they will all have their slightly different opinions. It's very brand driven and very user journey centric on how the expectation, because like you mentioned earlier, if I'm looking for a red t-shirt, a blue t-shirt, or a white t-shirt, and I land on the white t-shirt, but I'm actually looking for a red t-shirt, you have the potential to lose me as a customer at that point, right? I can go somewhere else, especially on Amazon, but you could go, well, if the red t-shirt was on the same PDP, well, I would have potentially bought the red t-shirt. And that's the same for, and getting into the psyche of what this looks like, but also as well is, a really great feature would be to put this in the A/B testing app, would be to almost combine listings with A/B testing, surface that there, and then pull that backwards.
Yeah, I want to show you guys something. This actually going to just throw it up here. I mean, I think there's a lot of psychological. So we're looking at the Apple website, and this always baffles me. So this is the MacBook 14-inch model. There's only one 14-inch model, but when I go to click buy, it'll show me a few different options here. The 10 core with 512 gigs, 10 terabytes, and then this is also 10 terabytes, but it's got higher memory. If I click into any of these to buy, but you notice the difference here? This is $2,300 more and another $300 more. So I'm only making a $300 decision on each of these. Now I go in, and if I pick this one, that's my base. Now I might upgrade the display. It's $250. I might upgrade this. It's this. But I've bucketed, like if I started on the cheapest model, like if they just said buy a MacBook and it started on the base, and now I have to add all these other options, as a customer, I'm feeling like I'm adding so much and it feels like it's getting expensive. But people can make small choice decisions in steps. And so like a jacket, let's just go back to that example. If you've got different levels of insulation and there's different qualities, like let the customer identify. So break that out. Like I would pick the whatever model here, and then I would add on the better screen.
Essentially, Jay, it's making a big decision into small parts of a decision without scaring the buyer. So essentially, it's breaking this down psychologically into, if you go onto a $1,500 Mac and you end up buying a $2,500 Mac, Apple absolutely nail this, right? They see this slight incremental bump, whether it's on a spec bump within a feature you want, but they split it out in such a way that it almost feels, by the time you've added 2 or 3 of these items, that tiny decisions really have made actually quite incremental gains on AOV for Apple. They definitely nail this. I mean, nobody goes onto Apple and buys a Mac, clicks buy and clicks buy again. Like nobody, right? They don't click buy twice. They just don't, right? They click buy, they review what it is, they make a small decision that they need a RAM bump or an hard drive bump, or they need some software, or they need a keyboard. They click that button and they get that increased AOV. There's a lot of lessons in this, I think.
Totally. And it's like, just because there's tools, it doesn't mean that you got to use them in a certain way. So because there's 2,000 variants, still think about your strategy. So let's move on to the next one. Sidekick Pulse. Sidekick is the Shopify's little, sometimes I call him Clippy, little ninja guy in the corner that you can talk to, and it'll help you with your running your store. I never used it for the longest time. Just in the last couple of months, I've actually found it pretty helpful. And the main things I use it for is running reports. So there's some canned reports, but like if I want to go in and write a script, run a query to get certain data. Also for customer segments, I found it really useful, like create a segment of VIP customers who bought X amount of times and spent a certain amount. But now it's getting proactive. So now it's going, you have to opt into this. I think it just shows it's live, I think, for everybody. When you log into your Shopify admin, you'll see it up at the top to opt into, what is it called? Shopify Insights, I think is the term. Anyways, as long as you opt into it, Sidekick will give you proactive advice on running your store and optimizing maybe abandoned cart emails or optimizing other, like proactively telling you to do stuff based on the data it sees. Thoughts on this?
I'm bullish on Sidekick. I did like a talk on Sidekick maybe like 3 months ago, and the cliff notes were like, it's cool, but like don't take away the human component of it because it is an emerging tool. Like there's been a bunch of, well, Shopify released an engineering behind the scenes, like an hour-long talk, and I thought it was really interesting how much they're investing in this part of the business. Like this is not just like a tack on, this is like quite a strong investment that has a lot of AI experts. And in order to like capture, like to action this data set and build your own pipelines, like it's a real soul here. And I think, you know, we're still seeing it to grow and develop, and I think Shopify is still playing around with it, but I think it has the opportunity to be quite powerful. And I see there as being like a behavioral trend for administrative power users, where instead of doing a bunch of these clicking, particularly, you know, you can save a recurring pattern that you do and put it into Sidekick and use Sidekick as your, you know, like one of your core areas to interact with the admin. I think it's got a good training mechanism here too, which is not, you know, if Shopify is like changing the UI or introducing a new feature, you don't have to go like try and find that. You can just ask Sidekick. And then I think data and insights is also a really important part. They rebuilt Shopify's like querying language, Shopify QL, with the last release of Sidekick, so that they play really nice together. And we're starting to really see that come through. I think devil's in the details again. Like if you're doing location-based segmentation, like maybe check if it's on billing address or shipping address, if you're looking at orders, like some things like that. But it's exciting. And I think it's good to see that they're capturing proactivity and being able to use some of these tools. I would just urge, check it, make sure that you as a human believe in that insight before you go ahead and action it, because there's probably going to be some hallucinations or some considerations that happen.
Yeah, I agree, Max. I think Sidekick is becoming center and front of where Shopify is going to go, though. I think there were 3 real things I think were big on Sidekick this time. And the first one is taking the gadget.dev approach and deploying apps. So essentially allowing you to store databases. And if you can store databases, you can run small apps and get that developed. I think that's really exciting, really early. So I don't think it's going to really be heavily used by anyone of any significance, but certainly small brands that don't really want to spend money on apps and they kind of want to think they can kind of control it themselves. I think that'll be used now. That'll change in the future. Second one, I think, is, and this is the big one, this is probably one of my most interesting points of additions, I think Sidekick app extensions was probably the most interesting point of the whole additions out of everything. Was we build apps, Max will build apps, app developers I speak to every day. How do we get AI into Shopify? What do we do? Essentially, they were building an infrastructure layer, putting their own credits on it, pinging it out and making that ping back. Now that there's app extensions, you can essentially use Sidekick through 2 means to use and read that data and read it back. So I think that's really interesting. And the third one is kind of around, well, the reporting side was always part of it from Summer Editions. You haven't really seen much sections being built in Shopify, and I seen someone demo the other day building some really advanced design sections on front end. I think the design side of what this could potentially do. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not going to be what agency level can do or any means by that, but I think for smaller brands, I think giving elements of design within sections directly in Sidekick could potentially open up some opportunities for brands. They're the 3, but Sidekick app extensions for me is probably the single side of rollouts, probably the single biggest feature I feel in this editions.
I put it as my Shopify's, all the stuff around Sidekick, as my number one, like I think impactful thing for merchants, because the A/B testing is awesome, but I think Sidekick is getting to a place now where like everyone should be using it, even if you're just ask it questions you wouldn't normally ask. Ask it to analyze your business's health for the last 3 months. What products are least performing, best performing? Run a sale on the ones that are like. Ask it things you wouldn't normally think about doing, and it's there. Like it's good.
One thing that is interesting as well is I read and I heard that Shopify's token limit that they used within Sidekick 4x'd in the last quarter. Now, bear in mind that it 4x'd in this quarter without all of these features released.
Yeah.
So let's suppose it 4x's again. Now,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to get into granular detail. How long can Shopify hold those tokens, whether that's for app developers or merchants? I mean, there's going to, if it gets
For sure.
significantly heavy use, it's got to live through some level of channel. And I know Shopify use Anthropic and Google and OpenAI and kind of merge that into their own knowledge base and outputs what that is,
Yeah.
and they've got their own infra layer. But I
Yeah.
think the usage was already 4x'd in this quarter, which I think is super interesting. What about next quarter?
Yeah. I wonder how long they can stay. No, that's a good point.
But if it helps merchants make more money and they're making money off of it,
exactly.
That's a very solid argument in the sense of what it is. But if it really pivots and they set that up with floors and they start setting full automations up, and that's using credits every time,
totally,
there's risk there. But anyway, it's not a worry for now, but it's just a consideration.
Yeah, probably wouldn't worry about it. But yeah, the embed is really cool. Like when I was thinking about Sidekick months ago, I was like, what if the actions that you could prompt could be done in Recharge or could be done in the third parties that make up your stack rather than just like siloed in the single instance of Shopify. So now that those tides were starting to get unraveled, it just becomes much more of a powerful tool.
The amount of conversational AI conversations I had with people building conversational AI for Shopify apps, there was, I mean, everyone was essentially building the same app, and it was, how do we build conversational AI? And I was essentially saying, when this surfaces on Sidekick, it's going to, you're better off just surfacing it naturally anyway, and then it's going to happen anyway. I think another interesting point on Sidekick, and this is for the future, I think if you look at Sidekick right now, it's only backend right now. Everything exists in admin on Sidekick. And I think one of the most interesting things would happen, especially across the app ecosystem, will be when Sidekick goes front end, right? Right now, I surface Sidekick as an admin on Shopify and I have certain tools. Now, let's suppose that doesn't happen and I can use it on the front end for different use cases for users. That's a very interesting use case.
Okay, now take that one step further with because the next on my list was the Shopify Product Network. And then you also have Shopify, what's it called? Where you actually like drop ship. Collective. So Shopify Product Network, they announced, which is kind of like an affiliate experience where you can show other people's products on your site through search. If they click through and buy it on that other site, not on your site, and that's the difference between Collective, you get some type of an affiliate fee. And I don't know what that is yet. I don't think they said, but it's probably going to be like 5 to 15%, like typical affiliate kind of fees. And then you've got Collective, but I was like, now imagine it's like Shopify slowly becoming a marketplace. I think everyone knows that.
What's the Shop app? What is Shop app?
Well,
Shop app
it's
the second or third biggest app in about 12 different countries right now worldwide, up there with Google. So it's becoming a marketplace.
I still remember when they were arming the rebels though against the Empire, against so
they're still doing that. They're still doing that, just in a different way.
But it's such a delicate thing, and I actually think Shopify is doing it in a way that is good. It's like if they just full on. I mean, they did launch a marketplace years ago and they shut it down, but now they're
covering themselves. They have to cover themselves, Jay, aren't they? In the sense of they need to cover themselves from the agentic side, from the marketplace angle that could happen. As long as essentially they get checkout, which is again what's happening in agentic, they have to cover themselves from all angles, and the level of velocity that they're building and developing in all of these areas, there's literally nobody in any ecosystem, let alone e-commerce, that's building anything at the velocity that Shopify does across so many different verticals. And I think that's like when summer editions dropped, I was blown away by how much they dropped. And then winter editions drops and they do it again. There's literally 5.5 months between it. So
well,
correct.
When you mentioned like Sidekick living on the front end of the store, have you played around with Shop App when you ask its AI for a product?
There you go. So that's it. So exactly Shop App, and then you can buy multiple stores. You can have multiple check. I did it the other day. I ordered 3 products from Japan, 2 products from America, and 2 from Europe. I'm in the UK. And in one checkout, in one time, all on the Shop App. And I had the level of trust that I knew that I could see the reviews from there, so I could read them directly from the app, and that I would be some level covered. So this marketplace isn't just like individually localized to that region. I'm using Shop App to order worldwide, essentially.
Yeah. So is it good or is it bad? Shopify Product Network, should merchants be turning it on to make some more money, or
I
because it
think
causes
like
more
for me,
damage?
it's like a place to watch. And as again, it goes back to this market thing and like how like I think brand integrity is like a big part of it. Like how do you control
Yeah,
where you turn
yeah.
up and kind of
Yeah.
control the channel and like the reputation of that and perception. So
Yeah.
for me, like
Luxury will struggle, Max. I think luxury products would probably not be of a good vertical, like in that sense. But potentially like utility products or
mhm,
homeware products, potentially like in that region it works. It's very niche to niche specific and brand orientation and layout specific. So I think like there's definitely use cases. It's a clever idea. It's smart, but at the same time, the brand needs to make that call.
yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm a fan of Collective. Actually, I'm actually a bigger fan of Caro. I don't know if you guys use the Caro.
Mm,
It was been around long before Collective, and they actually have a much more expansive network. Like you can pull in products from Target, from Walmart, from Best Buy. It doesn't just have to be a Shopify brand, but we've seen stores who have a single SKU, like maybe they sell a blender, and bring in a product that complements it, like the oil to put on your blender to keep it running. It's not something they sell, but there's good blender oil. And so they use Caro to bring that in, sell it on your site, one checkout, one experience. It feels like a brand. Like that I get. And I've seen stores like increase their average checkout size like 60% by adding products that are very complementary to their
like that
core.
makes sense to me. And the other
Is
thing that
this is this the new drop shipping? Is this the new drop shipping? Is it
That's the
Collective meets
question.
Shopify catalog? Is this the new drop shipping? Is there a way to kind of
yeah.
do people find angles within that? I don't know.
Max, are some of the brands that you work with using Collective or Caro or?
The collective is, I'd say, like it's kind of come up when you can control the surfaces. So, like,
Yeah.
we work with a lot of multi-brand kind of businesses where the need to like bring that product catalog onto multiple Shopify stores is something to solve. Like, it can be solved through a PIM, for example, or you can do that cross upsell using something like Collective. And so that's where Collective can kind of shine rather than, the wide sweeping thing, which is I'm going to allow my products to be published anywhere. That is something that we don't typically see a lot of.
Yeah.
It's probably handier for smaller brands as it is for larger brands. Get some level of exposure in places you necessarily wouldn't. Really, it's about surface and products and essentially maybe getting some free level of exposure. But I think for the larger brands, certainly when they're trying to protect the brand, it's maybe not so prevalent.
Yeah.
I know we're getting close on time here. I want to pick one more feature that we highlight, and then I want to talk about just one thing that we think was missed in this one. So, Max, I don't know, you saw my list. You probably have a list in your head. Is there one that we think we should highlight that we haven't talked about yet?
I mean, I got like a boring techie one, but it's been nice to see Shopify investing in a bit more of its POS back office, like omnichannel office, like small, but the fact that they took away the time limit on inventory system of order data retention is a big one. Like proper IMS, like proper inventory control within Shopify, it starts to break down at scale, and then you're thinking about what you can bring in there. And so the fact that they've got purchase orders, transfer orders, like more inventory elements there, and then starting to bring that into the POS surface is a very comforting thing for me to see, as we're looking at POS gaining more and more traction and being more and more attractive for brick and mortar scale brands.
Yeah, they're clearly, that is a future path for them. Like that is,
Yeah.
Gavin, which one will you want to highlight that we haven't yet?
Well, I've got a few, but I'm just going to do one which links exactly to what Max has just said. And I think I'm going to mention B2B features. So I think collectively, the B2B features, again, we got POS, we got some hardware, we got lots of tiny features that make big differences. I think B2B got the same as well. Potentially not had the love it's probably deserved over the years. It's had to kind of be the second cousin to B2C. But I think we've seen the shift a little on that to a degree in this editions, and it was nice to see some B2B features. And again, linked to POS. So I think that unified commerce angle is becoming more relevant.
Yeah, I noted a couple of highlights. I thought there was some really good ones in B2B too. So you can now issue store credit to your B2B merchants, which is important. ACH payments when you're doing huge volumes, saving a couple percent.
And Shopify payments was good. I like
that. Yes, ACH is good. I mean, because again, you've got to think, and this how does Shopify make its money? It predominantly makes its money from checkout, right? And if
Yeah.
you have to give some of that away to create efficiency around how B2B users use, I think that's a really interesting play and very proactive from Shopify to act on that and
Yeah.
deliver what's kind of been asked in the B2B space.
Yeah. And then the dynamic payment terms I thought was very useful too. So if you want to give different terms to a wholesaler who spends hundreds of thousands with you a year versus someone who doesn't, you can give them longer terms, better terms, like net 90 with 1% versus net 30 with 2%. Like
exactly, yeah. I mean, you only had like the obviously the terms meets catalog setup, so you had to set a catalog, set a set terms, and then you didn't have any level of dynamic between catalog and terms. The fact that we can now do that, massive. So many use cases.
And the fact that like everything is backboned by the API, so that like big part of B2B is the extensibility of B2B and how it fits into a ERP and all that kind of stuff. So the fact that payment terms are exposed in an API layer is also like fully powerful.
Yeah. One last one that I wanted to highlight. It's a small one, but I think it's actually super useful, and I've found myself needing this a lot, is the direct editing in the theme editor. It seemed like a small feature that not a lot of people talked about, but now in your theme editor, if you want to change the price on a product or change copy or change something, because I always would have my theme editor and then go back to the product and go back thing, and context shifting costs a lot of time. And when you can do something when you're in one workflow, I find it a lot easier. And this might be for smaller brands with not where they're managing their only a few products, but I think it'll be a big time saver for a lot of brands.
Yeah, me too. It's not just about editing, like you can actually like see the value. So it's like, even if you don't actually edit the thing, the fact that you have visibility on those data endpoints can continue going in that flow.
Correct. Yeah, I think that you'll actually be able to see all the options that are on a product and change them right from there as well too, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I haven't played with it yet, but that's my...
You can see the options. You can see anything that it lives on within the meta fields or anything that lives that it subs off that particular field.
Yeah,
hugely valuable. Even valuable from a standpoint if you were to bring in a third-party ERP integration, or you want to do anything from an integrational standpoint at a later stage. At least you can see where that lives, what that looks like on the back end, without necessarily having to scope around and look at what that looks like on the back end. So yeah, really great.
Okay, what was missed? What was the thing was there anything you were hoping for that didn't get announced? Or
I want to see like a little bit more in like admin permission growth and like some thinking about the different workflows of brands that come in. Like, I think this is going to be an area that will see some traction in 2026. So I'm not holding my breath for too long, but kind of that and how it might play into market, how you might be doing, you could get users in certain countries to be playing nice in certain parts of the instance together would be a good thing that would enable for some of the brands that we work with.
I think one thing that was slightly missed, and they released SMS through Contactor now. I think you've probably seen how you can now SMS as well as email through the...
Yeah, it's now, instead of Shopify, it's Shopify messaging.
Shopify messaging. I think the part, and I don't know whether it was necessarily missed as opposed to it's just in the roadmap and they build it out, is if you look at what like Klaviyo and whatnot kind of do around flows and how that links to that messaging, I think some type of unification between messaging on SMS and email, but that's kind of potentially linked to flows. So it's kind of like, you can essentially build contact flows within Shopify itself using these native features. Because right now, the reason I think obviously Shopify has a vested interest in Klaviyo, but in the sense of if you look at for smaller brands, why they would need Klaviyo, it's essentially around communication and flow. And really, Shopify already has that because it has flow and it can now comms through SMS and email. But the part of the unification of that pulling together, yes, it can be built, but it should kind of just be kind of almost there. Small, but massive.
The one I thought, I think it's going to happen, whether it's the next edition or a few editions down the road, is I feel like Shopify needs to launch Shopify CDP. So and that's what I was thinking in my head earlier when I said PDP instead of PIM, a customer data platform that they seem to be going in this direction with their AI personalization. They've kind of got loose customer segments you can create, and they're kind of building a lot of wrappers around it, but like a true customer data platform of knowing who the customer is, everything about them, the lifetime.
And then also And linked to PIM as well on that point, Jay, as well. I think we're seeing on our end as many migrations with Shopify to PIM as people who are getting rid of PIM and then using PIM on there. And then what the only part that they miss is that CDP part where they want that full kind of what's the customer journey, what are they all doing, what does that data set look like? But bringing all that together as a collective.
Yeah,
he's kind of.
I go in some stores and like the tags on products just is overwhelming, and the way that they're managing it. And I thought, and actually I asked ChatGPT if like, does this make sense? Like, should Shopify be going in their direction? And it said Shopify is essentially building an agentic commerce future on top of a customer model that was designed for 2014. So I guess
yeah, I mean, if you could definitely
ChatGPT was a bit harsh, but.
I like that cynic view. I like that cynical view. It's pretty true.
But I think it's a good question to ask. Yes, it's investing in agentic, but it's also investing in owning the customer more and more. And like, big part of the unification story is like have a unified profile of that customer, and then be able to action that across a multi-surface channel environment, turn up anywhere someone wants to interact. And so I think it is going to mature over time. I'm very interested in like the interplay with something like Klaviyo that, there is some CDP there as well. And, that's really tied into SMS and email and app prompts and what have you. And what's the big picture there and how much does Shopify want to take on?
Yeah. It is as well, Max, on that. I think Sidekick's potentially the iPass for all of those things to happen, whether they're unified apps and non-unified apps. And I think if you start to look at it a little bit that way, in the sense of like from a brand perspective, I think that's where they see Sidekick living. It is essentially the iPass for all these internal flows to then be built out, like these full customer journey, own and checkout, A/B testing, report flows, and then reporting back. And I think it's some really smart moves by Shopify in how they're kind of getting there without really demonstrating the master plan.
Yeah, agreed. Well, this was fun. There was 147 ones we didn't announce, or that we didn't discuss on the show. Make sure you check them out, everyone listening. Go read all about them. It's worth the time. Some of them are really worth playing. I mean, we didn't even talk about the new flexible inventory controls. I love the unlisted products. You can create things that are hidden products now that you can use for multiple reasons. Like there's so much in this one. It's definitely worth checking out. This was a lot of fun. We'll have to do it again on the next 6 months in the summer editions. Can you guys just let our listeners know really quick if someone wants to follow you or learn more about you, your company, what social media platforms you're active on, and where you want to send them?
Yeah, totally. My name is Max Rolon. Find me on LinkedIn, CTO of Domaine. Pretty mildly active there, so we'll get back in touch quickly. The website is meetdomain.com. You can always get in touch there. We can reach out to me at max@meetdomain.com.
Awesome.
Amazing. Yeah, Gavin McKew, Shero Commerce. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You can reach me out on there. Gavin@sherocommerce.com if there's any queries around anything. But this has been super fun, Jay. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, thank you for giving the time and coming on and sharing your insights. I appreciate it.
Max, amazing.
All right.
Thank you, Max.
Thanks.
Talk soon, guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys.